Great. Okay, hi Ram. Welcome to
Hello.
Medgar Times.
Thank you
How are
so
you?
much. I'm doing
Yeah,
great. I'm just
yeah.
doing the last step of setting the
I'm just so happy I got to talk to you because I really loved Jugnuma. I think it's not only one of the most beautiful but also one of the most audacious film I have seen this year, and
Thank
also my favorite film of the year. I'm not just
you.
telling to
Thank you so much.
for the sake of ego massage or anything, but I really genuinely think my favorite film of the year. What
Thank
you
you.
have done is fantastic. And before we get into the film, I would like to begin by asking you. The original title of the film was The Fable, but
Correct.
when it came to the Indian theaters, it was changed to Jugnuma the Fable.
Correct.
So it was interesting that word Jugnuma because it sounded like some kind of a phenomenon, Jugnuma.
Correct.
So yeah, it went to there. So my question is, who came up with this title? Who came up with that beautiful cursive font? And yeah, let's start
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the title was suggested by Ranjan Singh, who heads Flip Films, who's our distributor. Um, and it's such a layered and beautiful title. The Fable was a title. Yes, it took you to the right. It directed you to the right part of the story. But Jugnuma, as a being a, it's a made up word, right? It has a lot of layers to it, but the film is also a made up world. It's from a made up place, and so that feeling of it being fictional, to represent a fictional world was very exciting. Also, it's a title that is somewhat open to interpretation, as is the film. So there's space within the title to interact with it, because it's actually Jugnu Nama becoming Jugnuma. That's one interpretation.
Okay.
Of course, Jugnu is firefly, and then beyond that, there are other interpretations. Like Jug is Yug, which means age.
Wow.
you know
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so it has all these layers. It's also like the light of the firefly, or I think of it sometimes like the adverb of like the action of the fireflies, the tail of. So all in all, see, it's a conversation starter. We're enjoying talking about even the title. So it was a really fitting title, I think.
It was, and now you have explained it. There are so many layers now. I'm more impressed by it.
And the font,
So
the font also was from the team Warriors Touch, who did the poster design and things like that. They came up with the font, and I love the font so
yeah,
much. Even the
beautiful.
Fable had a playful font, but this is playful and elegant. It's very beautiful.
Beautiful. And okay, now I want to ask you, while you were making this film, was there any movie or any movies or any director you were thinking of while making it for like reference? Okay, was there some derivation like that?
There were a few. I think Guillermo del Toro's work was a big inspiration. So if you see Pan's Labyrinth, which again was a very brave film made outside of the typical studio system in Spain, they put it together, say at least outside of the Hollywood system, and it was fantasy. They had the faun, and they had all these fantastic creatures, and the scale was very beautiful. And it was again a simple story, but it was a story of contrasts. So it was very violent and magical at the same time. So Pan's Labyrinth was one of them.
Now you mentioned Pan's Labyrinth. I can see okay where
Yes.
this is coming from. That's very interesting. Okay, so I was going through your older interviews to prepare for this one. I also went through the Wikipedia page and all that. So I came across this information that you went to the Himalayas and then you were involved in a fire
Correct.
incident, and from there this Jugnuma, that story, this came
Right.
from that incident. So it's a little silly question, but I wanted to, was that trip a casual trip, or it was like planned? Okay, I need some creative juice or something, so let me
No,
go to the.
that's a great question. It's actually the second. It was planned, and the
Okay.
fire just happened to have. So I had the intention, I had the genre, I had the note and the emotion of the story, which is usually my starting point. I start from emotion, not from narrative. So even now, I'm just starting something new, and again, I'm starting from emotion. So I feel very comfortable to start from emotion and then see where the emotion takes me to discover the narrative. So that intention was there, and then the fire came. Like things start to come to you, like they kind of, like life gives you guidance as to how to form it. So yeah, that happened, and many more experiences also happened. For example, the house where we shot, the first scene, the long shot, the long
Yeah, yeah.
take, that
Yes.
was designed based on the geography of the house. So it's not like I wrote into the script there will be this long. Before I wrote the script, I realized that this house was perfect to create a shot starting at the bedroom, ending at the edge of a cliff, because the house is at, it's at the edge of a cliff. So the house created that idea. So my process is very organic like that.
Organic, and I will also say spontaneous, because you were not planned. You didn't plan that opening, and
Correct.
then it came. So you are quite open to new experience, if I can say.
100%.
Yeah. So you're speaking. Though that's the first thing when I watched the movie in the theater. The first thing that grabbed my attention when that the first image finally came on the screen, was I enjoyed the look of the film, how it looked. In my review, I wrote that the way you shot the film, it blurred the outlines, it softened the edges, and it
Right.
felt like the characters drifted into their surroundings, and the surroundings just kind of breathed. It took them in,
Correct.
breathed them in. So it was so beautiful, and I wanted to ask you, what did you and your cinematographer Sunil Borkar you discussed before the shooting to plan this visual aesthetic, and what changes did you made as you were shooting the film
Yeah.
before and during? Yeah.
So, I mean, the visual journey has been really fascinating, and it's been a long sort of pipeline to reach that final visual image. Firstly, in terms of the craft and how things blend into each other, I think I really like, even from an art point of view, I like Impressionism. And if you look at art history, I like from Impressionism onwards more than what happened before that, because I guess emotion leads it, and it's easier to access emotion when things are not perfectly defined, but you still feel them. So you see them and you feel them. So 16 treated like that, especially you shoot a lot of magic hour and things, it starts to feel impressionistic. Especially in 2025 where everything is so digital and sharp,
Yeah.
it leaves, it's so harsh, it's almost like rock, but this is like water. And it's that's the difference in the way it feels. So I liked that feeling for the kind of story that we wanted to tell. Interestingly, the decision to shoot on film happened much earlier, like around the script time, and it wasn't a camera team decision. It was more of a production design decision. So me and the production designer Juhi Agarwal, we were trying to see how do we transport people back to that era? How do we make it feel authentic? So we decided that film would be a way to make that whole world, firstly nostalgia, and secondly it was the medium of the time. So it became a very easy and very early decision right at the script stage. So then a lot of the production design started before the camera sort of work started, and it was sort of Juhi's aesthetic along with my script writing vision that kind of set the whole visual tone for the film. I also storyboarded the entire film along with a incredible animator Upamanyu Bhattacharya, who's a great animator from Calcutta. So we sat and storyboarded the entire film, 278 pages or something. So it was kind of like a Bible, a visual Bible for the book, and in that a lot of the visual details and the framing and all was pre-decided. So then I met Sunil. Sunil was actually he was a gaffer at the time, and he showed a lot of promise. I loved his photography from Instagram. I just felt a cohesion. He also would play with light and dark and things like that. He was brave. He would underexpose. So these were the kind of ideas that I was keen on. So then we studied films like The Godfather, where they underexpose 3 to 5 stops. The way they kind of approach it is braver, because typically you should use a lot of light in shooting film, but we still use a lot of light, but we learned how to give it that underexposed uh, sort of emotion without it looking bad. That took a lot of testing. It took 8 or 9 tests, and then yes, there were a lot of practical lights, which was the border between production design and cinematography. And Sunil did a fantastic job then nailing the ratios. And he of course operated the entire film as well. So we shot. So that is the next step. After that, we get into post production. We have the colorist Himanshu Kamble, who worked extremely hard and actually did a lot of selective grading. So certain parts of the screen were graded separately from other parts, and that takes time, and it also takes a real talent for being able to do that. So some bits were relit, some bits were kind of created in that post production process, and last was the VFX, because there are over 500 VFX shots, which is quite a bit. It's closer to a studio film rather than an independent film, and to create VFX that look like 16 VFX. So all that magical imagery, for example, the flowers, for example, the feeling of we're in a magical world, that's all CGI. So the VFX, which was led by Varun Ramana, his way of working to make things organic. Also, it was a long journey to create that. So this was this long visual pipeline that led to the final image.
This was interesting because I came across this information that it was a VFX heavy film while I was doing my research, and I was the first reaction was, what? Are you serious? VFX? Where? Why didn't I notice it? How? What? Where? So that was terrific what you did, that blend of VFX without making it stick out like some green screen rubbish or whatever.
Correct.
I was just shocked by that information, but life is full of surprises, I guess. uh, so okay, now while we are on the topic of images, Jugnoma is filled with all these stunning images, and one of my favorite scenes, actually there are plenty of favorite scenes, but I will get to them slowly. But one of them is the scene where that Dev's daughter and that young nomad, they go to the horse stable at night, and inside they start chanting, that meditation, and there is this lamp in the middle, in the background, and it extinguishes after a while. Then a firefly comes into the frame, sits on it, the candle reignites, and it goes away. And when I saw that scene, I was blown away, because the amount of creative vigor and the imagination that you conjure with that, just a simple scene like that, it's missing from so many big budget commercial mainstream movies that reach for fantasy, but you achieve so much with that, just a small simple scene. So I want to know what gave you the idea, what inspired you to come up with a scene like that. Yeah.
So I am quite like classical when I try to structure my screenplays, and I feel like at certain points you have to create something that kind of changes the way the audience is responding to the story. So if you've seen my first film, Titi, in Titi, Gadapas tells a story 2/3 into the film that changes the meaning of the entire story. So if you look at it structurally, this firefly relighting the candle is roughly in the same time space as that, because the film is going in a certain way and it's about something. And then at that moment in time, it's a beautiful place to set up the final act as that maybe it's about something else. So that's part of the magic realism genre that's quite challenging and exciting to work with. But yeah, the bravery was to create those little sparks of magic, and I think a lot of it's also inspired by, because my wife and I, we kind of made this film together. The film is, I've been married for 8 years, and the film is about 8.5 years. So just before I got married, I started this process, and then both of us together built all these things. And in our life and in our thing, there was always these little moments of magic. And when I was writing the script, we'd have these conversations about how we could like bring magic into it. And so I feel like a lot of it is a reflection of that collaboration as well. Which I don't get to talk about much, but like really the whole thing came together because of those conversations. Because early on it was just both of us, and even like when we were sitting by the monitor, it would always be both of us sitting on the monitor together. And I used to say, this is so romantic. Like it's so nice that we're in love and we also get to work on a film. I feel like a lot of these like magic moments, they came out of that I don't know how to explain it because that's a bit abstract, but it was born out of that tenderness. So a lot of the tender moments in the film was because it was a very familial vibe. Everyone was so close together, and that collaborative feel gave all these little bits of magic.
I think you explained it very, very well. Beautiful. I'm loving your answers.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on. So, I think that if you watch a great film, it reveals its greatness within the first 5 or 10 minutes, generally. So, with Jugnuma, of course, you have that opening, that terrific, terrific one shot sequence. But, the scene that really made me sit up and say, okay, I'm in the presence of a great mind is the scene where it's near the beginning where the whole family is sitting in front of the fire and the daughter requests her mother to sing a song. I think she sings Shivoham, if I'm not
Right.
wrong. And then when she's singing, in the middle of her song, you do something very interesting. You show a brief glimpse of the future, the fire and all that.
Right.
And I was very that small moment, it just made me go like, okay,
Hmm.
this is going to be a very, very interesting film. And let me tell you, I watched Jugnuma. Uh, when I watched Jugnuma, I hadn't watched Thithi, so this was my introduction to you.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, okay, Ram Reddy, okay, okay, he's doing something very interesting here. I really like this. So maybe this might be kind of a silly question, but I just want to know why did you decide to cut to that future?
No,
At
I
the
love these questions. In fact, these are not at all, these are some of the best questions I've had till now because they are the things that I'm the most passionate about within the film itself. And I feel like we connected via the film on those moments.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I, so that was almost even a controversial decision, like, even with the team and stuff like that, because so much of it is mystery and suspense. But what I felt was it is a mild premonition. And what is she really singing about? She's singing Shivoham, right? So we are not this, we are not this, we are pure consciousness. And within the realm of consciousness, the time and space, they don't function in the same way as our physicality. And so I felt that that song was like a symbolic premonition of the truth of the family. And no matter what this was going to happen, because it was their destiny or whatever. So when the family are in that cohesive moment where they are all together with their eyes closed, it's like, the future, it's a sense of the future awaits, right? So it was more of an emotional decision. It was also partly a decision to not let people get hooked on narrative logic. So you don't want it to become so sequential, because the film otherwise it builds in a very sequential way, like very. So I needed to break that, to know that beyond the story there's a deeper layer that's as important. So if you watch the whole film, it's almost like there's a second film within the film, on the subtle layer. So it's just kind of like our human body. We have the body, but we have a subtle body inside it. So the film has a body, which is these fires are happening, and within that there's a subtle body, which is a different trajectory. So there's a narrative arc of the subtle body as well. And this was that planting. So I don't know if I did justice to that, because it was just an instinctual thing. I felt like we have to break that obsession with narrative and move emotional. So there is mystery, but it's not only what happens, it how and why does it happen.
No, your decision was justified, really. And speaking of great scenes, there's another great scene that I really, really loved, and it comes when Dave confronts his manager. Not confronts means, I mean, he kind of talks to him, the Deepak Dobriyal character, and he basically tells him that he doesn't even trust him anymore. Like, so that you have two terrific performers like Deepak Dobriyal and Manoj Bajpayee, and the subtlety and the clarity with which they bring out that emotion, it almost shatters the screen. And I was like, okay, this is too explosive without being that explosive. It was
Yeah.
very explosive. So I wanted to know, what did you tell those two actors before shooting that actual scene, and did they get it right the first time, or did you go through multiple retakes?
Uh, No, yeah. So that is one of the emotional peaks of the film, because the film, it's one of the core relationships between father and manager, and it's also an old relationship. So there's so many layers to that relationship, and the trust was always implicit. So this really shows how, obviously, the event that precedes that is also quite dire, because it's the house, and we know there's that hint that the dogs didn't bark, right? So then that's where the doubt creeps into the mind of even someone. They love each other, but he has to protect his family, Dave. So that moral dilemma is there. He finds it hard to do, but there's a certain coldness that comes over him by then. And he loses trust not just in Deepak but in life, in everyone, in everything. So that was his stance, and I think Manojji just nailed that stance. Like, I didn't have much to say. Deepak Bhai's journey in that scene is really fascinating and complex, because the beats he has to go through. In fact, firstly, he's already in a state of worry in the beginning of that scene. uh, but he's trying his best to think, how can I salvage this? Somebody knocks on the door, there's no chance he can imagine it's him. So the first shock is that. Then, so much if there's another fire, it's his job to solve it. So it goes from extreme concern, extreme confusion, then he's trying to read father while trying to solve the problem and be the person he's always been. So that duality, again, Deepak Bhai did a fantastic job. He I think he got it right every time, but we did it 4 or 5 different ways, just changing the ratio of these beats. So maybe a little bit more, love, little less doubt. Okay, little bit more, you're not sure, you're reading him. So you can see his eyes are darting across Manoj's face.
Yeah.
He's trying to find something, because he senses something is wrong earlier, but he could never imagine that it would be that breach of trust. And then at the end, when it breaks, it's one of the best moments, performance wise in the film, because you see that entire history between the two relationships, and and he just takes this gentle breath. He looks down, and he's like, how did this happen and what now? So yeah, so I think they did a fantastic job in that scene. I do retakes. It's not like I'm quite tough generally that way, and I'm quite clear with what I'm looking for. So we do search for things. But the thing with fantastic actors is you never get a bad take. What you will get is a slightly different narrative note. So you're searching for the narrative notes rather than, so that play, yes, we did quite a bit of it. But particularly this scene, they nailed it.
Now, speaking of, no, now I'm very curious. Means how easy was it to work with actors like Manoj, Deepak, Priyanka, and all that in Jugnuma versus how easy was it to work with the actors of Thithi? How was your experience while handling both bunch of different groups of actors? Was it the process same, or did it become easier this time, or what? What was it?
That's again a complex question where, like, I don't know how I'll give an easy, succinct answer, because my journey with Titi, with the non-actors. One sec, there's a little bit of noise. Can you give me a minute? I'll just.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fine.
I didn't want the noise to disturb the interview. See, my entire career was with non-actors, to be honest. That's where I was working all my short films, most of them, and Titi. Partly because I believed that non-actors have a very natural, like it wasn't. I felt it wasn't done enough in cinema, and there's great authenticity, and there's so many stories just within their faces and their voices, and so I was always thinking, how can I put that on the big screen? So the other reason is that early on I didn't have the access to actors. So we didn't have funds, and it was also a practical solution that we should work with non-actors, because it's a way you can access them. When I went on that journey, it's an extremely challenging journey, because non-actors don't have even the want to act. So you are on their terms, and now if you're on their terms, the key is to cast them before you write. understand them and then write so they can be themselves. So it has to be a line that they would naturally say, and then the biggest challenge with non-actors is they don't remember their lines at all. And I think this is where a lot of filmmakers also give up with non-actors. They're not trained to remember lines. And if you have long scenes and you want the scenes to flow in a certain way, so then that is the biggest challenge. So they take a lot of takes to just remember the lines, and you have to convince them. And so a lot of it is reacting. Even as a director, you have to just be with them. You have to make them feel safe. You have to try. The energy has to be very dynamic. Whereas with actors, they come as a co-creator, like a co-collaborator. They have their own interpretation of characters. They have processed the backstory, so they are already working on you and with you. So that same energy, it's quite different with actors. Because there you just have to push a button. You're not doing everything and like creating everything. And basically it's about trying to hit the right note. And it's also a lot about mutual trust. Like you have to trust the actor, and the actor has to trust that you want to optimize their performance. Y'all are a team. And these actors are some of the best actors like that I've seen, and I'm so fortunate to have had them in my first real experience with professional actors. I think I'm a bit spoiled now because they're all so amazing. They were all so supportive, and I don't know. I was nervous before meeting Manojji, but after I met him, with the way he connected with the script and just what he's like as a person, he made me feel very safe. He also made me feel, I don't know, confident in my own vision. And I was 2 films down. He's 100 films down. It's my second film. So as my super, super, super senior, he didn't make me feel that way. He made me feel like a co-collaborator. So that put me at ease, and then we just worked. It's like you show up, everyone brings their own magic, and you work. You try to find something.
But that's I think your experience with non-actors, I think it really helped you here, because I find what you do quite interesting, because you take this professional actors, you take this non-professional actors. Even Jugnuma, there are some non-professional
Yeah,
actors.
quite a few.
So but you take them together and you just put them on the same wavelength, so it's not like the actors are overshadowing the non-actors, or if the non-actors are spoiling the actors' performance. And I think that's where your experience comes,
In
it
good use.
yields a response, rewards. So I like how you put them on the same wavelength, so it's everything, it just fits, it looks right. So I think that experience really helps.
It really does. And here it was also really interesting to have non-actors and actors acting in the same scene. So we have Manoj acting with Ravi Bisht, who's a villager from that area. Except Ravi Bisht, unlike all my other non-actors, was very keen to do it. So he spent a lot of time with the lines. So he was almost like an aspiring actor, but he'd never done it before, and he's from that place. So he brings his own energy and things like that. But he was so honest. And again, Manojji made him feel so at ease, and he had the courage to act with Manojji without, you know, going into shock or being so stressed, because he's such a great actor. So hats off to both of them for helping me create that unity. But this unity I was very excited to do, because that also hasn't been seen in too many films. Before Titi, there weren't so many films so brave with non-actors, but now there are quite a few. And there have always been films with non-actors, but films with actors and non-actors playing big roles are fewer. So you'll have a lot of films with senior actors and then junior actors playing the smaller roles. But I wanted to make it cohesive. And honestly, the non-actors, they can at best be themselves, and perform. It is the actors who created that seamlessness by allowing us to make it so naturalistic. And they were with me on that, that let's make this cohesive. And each of them had this ability to transform. In fact, Tilottama's character was the only character in the non-actor schedule, because she played a villager with all the villagers. and she had to blend seamlessly. It's only because she has such a fantastic control over her craft, you know.
Sure.
So I really lucked out with the actors being able to be so natural, and that is why it's realism while being magical. So that realism, if you don't nail it, you know, I take that very seriously. So the performance wise, it's a big challenge. You have to make it feel like these are real people, and everyone was on board.
That's true. And one of the things that, apart from, like I mentioned earlier, that how your images blend the characters with the surroundings, it's almost like how you, with your tone, you blend fantasy and reality. I think that same thing can also be found in the dialogues, and I will give you an example because we are talking about Tilotma's character. She's Radha, if I remember her name correctly. Yeah. So she tells her kid that when the dead bodies are burned, they feel like they're getting a hot shower.
Yeah.
On one end of the spectrum, you have a line like this. On the other end, you have a line like what that police officer says to Colonel when the colonel asks him how far is Radha's house, and he says, "Sir, थोड़ी दूर है लेकिन दूर है." You know, काफी very normal line. It's
Yeah.
like you might
There's
say
no
you
way.
are walking on the street, someone asks you, okay, ये दुकान का ही वाले, हाँ यहाँ से आगे दूर है, थोड़ी दूर है लेकिन हाँ दूर है, मतलब it's there. So you do that fusion of fantasy reality even through the dialogues.
Yeah,
So
even through the
was
writing.
that a conscious choice? You are writing, you were like, okay, I have to figure out this also apart from images. So
Yeah, 100%. Because I think you have to move between the poetic, to the mundane, even from the point of view of like the importance of certain moments or lines, and that blending of genres, even from a point of view of, and this no one has ever asked me this before, so it's really nice because you're talking particularly about dialogue construction, right, and delivery. So to be very honest, so the line you pointed out with the Patwari talking to the colonel was improvised. But
okay.
so we give that, you have to give that space for improvisation for the natural moments to feel real. Another example is when they're all at the dinner table and they're talking about rhododendron, the pronunciation of rhododendron. That wasn't in my script. We created that environment, and they're all such wonderful reactive actors that they decided, let's do this improvisation on the pronunciation of the word rhododendron. So, and then if you see the laughter there, it's very natural. Or there are moments where they're laughing around the bonfire. So that's where improvisation allows those moments to feel very real. But dialogue is also a carrier of inner meanings, layers, metaphors, right? So there are moments where they need to feel like the right carrier of that emotion. And so in Tilottama's storytelling, there's a lot of poeticism, and even in a lot of the voiceovers,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and Varun Grover translated the voiceovers from English to Hindi, and a lot of his poeticism came in at that point. So that blending of writing dialogue styles, and because I wrote the film alone this time, there weren't any co-writers. I was able to move that, and I'm very aware of the style in that scene or that portion of the film and how it blends. So you're not only watching out to nail the scene, you're trying very hard to nail the transitions. So because if I was to take the poetic line and juxtapose it immediately with the other line, you'd feel the contrast.
Yeah.
But if you transition via, so after the storytelling, there's a shot of them sitting around a bonfire, which is like a medium shot, which then transits into day. So it goes from poeticism to mystery to narrative. But if you jump from poeticism to narrative, you'll feel the contrast. So when you're moving between spaces of realism and magic and everything, you have to be more aware of the joints. Firstly, you have to be aware of the notes, but you have to be aware of how the notes are joining. And I tried my best.
Fantastic. Your answers are making me appreciate the movie more. I actually love it, but that love is just increasing tenfold, 20-fold, 30-fold. I don't know. So while we are on the topic of dialogues, let's go to the sound, more natural seek. And I think what you did with sound is fantastic, and sound is important. Give you an example about why, because I will take the example of the flying sequence where we see Manoj Bajpayee in the wings flying in the sky.
Correct.
And you have seen characters flying in the movies, for years. It has become a very common sight. You are seeing
Right.
Superman, Fantastic Four, anything. It's common. Okay, if character is flying, you are like, okay, yeah, this is done with CGI cables, whatever. Okay, let's do it. But here it's it feels very tangible, and that's because when I was watching the movie in the theater, that sound of the wind blowing in the air, it was like, okay, it's blowing near my ear, so it
Right.
was like, okay, I am in the sky with the Dave.
Yeah.
And even that shaky cam, it was very shaky, and it was like, okay, it feels very real, and quite wonderful. So I want to ask you, how did you shoot that flying sequences? And please be as technical as possible. I'm really loving your this technical answers. Please.
We didn't shoot those flying sequences. They are CGI completely,
Seriously.
100%. So Manoj Bajpayee was, we had created a digital double of Manoj Bajpayee, and yeah, it's 100% CGI. So the base of that is the VFX work, and on top of that, the sound design, and so the camera movement was designed in VFX. So that's a camera that has been sort of programmed to feel like wind is hitting it. So because wind, when it interacts both with something like someone's holding a visual thing, which is a camera, you're going to shake. You're in the middle of the sky. However, and when wind hits a mic, or even when wind hits our ear when we're on a bike, say, and riding fast, you're going to hear this brushing across the earlobe that sounds like,
Yeah.
So that, and so it interacts. See, a ear is like a mic anyway. So and wind is pressure. It's a shift of pressure. So when a mic is under that, it feels like it's wrong. The mic is not collecting the sound of the wind. The mic is getting messed up by the wind, let's say. And that's how the experience would be if you're in the sky. So we wanted flying to be relatable. We didn't want flying to be, and the whole idea is he's not Superman. He's a man who has a hobby. That's the genre, right? So if you can go for a jog, you can go for a flight because it's the Himalayas, and this is the kind of story we're telling. So that's how that realism of the fantastic, and so before he takes off, when he's walking in the long take, the village women pass him and say namaste, namaste. Nothing about like, oh, namaste, you're going for a flight, or oh, namaste, like, nice wings. They greet each other because there's nothing great about his flying. It just is. And I think Nitin did, Lucas, who's a sound designer, he did Titi with me as well, so we knew each other really well, and I felt like he is so good with naturalistic layering of sounds in such a way that you don't have, it's a very complex sound design, but you don't feel that because of the way he layers things. And then I don't end up needing music. Suppose I put a score across this film, it would have changed the entire film, and a lot of people encouraged me to do that, because then you can have like the Disney like fairy tale, but that's a different film. That's because then it's not magic realism, then it's magical drama or magical theater, let's say. But this is magic realism, right? So the sound design needed to be realistic, but in the absence of music and such a complex emotional film with all these arcs and like this dreamlike quality, how do you create emotion with sound? And that was our challenge. So then when it comes to nature sounds, I know I'm getting very technical and I'm like having these long answers, but when it comes to nature sounds, there aren't that many to choose from. You have crickets, you have birds, you have wind and space. That's about it. In the woods, I'm saying. You have rustles, like leaf rustles. That's about it. There are no cars, there's nothing. From a concrete jungle, there are, sometimes there are some animal sounds. How can you use that to create emotion? So the tonality of the time gap between two cricket chirps, are they rhythmic? Or do you create a hollow sense of space and then have a single owl in the distance to create a sense of, a vacuum? Uh, and then we did all the premix in Atmos, where we have a lot of control over positioning sounds. We also took sounds from a wildlife field recordist. So there's a Spanish lady who was one of the first wildlife field recordists actually in history professionally. She's a bit older now, and she had been to India many times with a parabola mic. And a parabola mic is a mic that zooms like a zoom lens. So you can basically single out a bird on a tree without all the other stuff. So Nitin sat and he took particular birds and positioned them in particular places in the atmos, to create emotion. So all that subliminal work, finally, many people are saying it was so beautiful to be lost in the sounds of nature. But it was designed sounds of nature with emotional beats happening throughout. So that realism, it's like a trick to lull the audience into a certain emotion, but there's heavy design behind it.
I have, I have. That's very interesting. I have a couple of more questions, but I don't know if you have time or not because, or I can try to wrap it up because there are a list of too many questions. Okay, I will
Okay,
try
I
to.
can be a little briefer. Let's see how many we can get
No,
through.
don't be brief. I'm loving your long answers
I can be
really.
a little briefer.
You can, but it's not really recommended. But I was just wanted to ask you if you have a time enough for what for
Yeah,
I.
right now I'm all right.
Okay, so moving on. If one wants, you can find this small connections between Thithi and Jugnuma. I'm talking like this an issue of the land. There's this thing about death, and then there is this romance between two young people. Very, I mean, it's not exactly right, but you can find some traces of that. So when you were writing Jugnuma, were you conscious about this thing that you are kind of recycling some things that you have done in Thithi,
Yeah.
or was it, or it was just
No, I
naturally
think
came
I
to you?
think this happens with most filmmakers, who are uh, they have certain inbuilt narrative instincts, I think, and they end up sort of not necessarily recycling, but yes, like kind of using similar structures or similar things to achieve certain kinds of balance. So I was not at all aware while I was writing. In fact, like the first time I write the first draft, it's kind of like this blank flow where you sit and you just aren't thinking. You're not rereading, nothing. You're just writing. Uh, and so I didn't know. I can definitely see it now. Even like they get drunk at the wedding, but in Titi
Yeah,
the shepherds get drunk and they lose their sheep and things like
yeah,
that. So those things are there. They happen. I think it's just my instincts as a writer. But I think more importantly, I like, and my films take a while to make because I don't like making a film about one thing. I like making a film about life itself. And so you want to address all the sort of present and universal themes within life itself in a very particular narrative. So in life itself, at a teenage age, there will be some relationships happening. You can't escape it with your hormones at that age, or in some kind. So then if there's a teenage character, there will be that attraction. It's natural. Land is something that everyone has to deal with, whether it's land or ownership, whether it's owning a house or a flat in Bombay or whatever. Everyone has to build up to having that sense of security. It's just a human need. So then these are all like universal things that just kind of have to come into a film that's about all of life. So I think that's how they kind of come in as elements. And I like to also create ecosystems where things balance each other out. So, you have something as, let's say, materialistic as land and, wealth as a number. And then you have an inner pursuit of something higher or a detachment, so they have to all play in the same film. And before I made these two films, I wrote a novel called It's Raining in Maya, which is a magic realism novel, and that was my debut. And I didn't do anything about it. Like, I just put it online and I moved on. So I didn't go down the route. But that again is a contrast between innocence and corruption or the loss of innocence. So it just kind of functions that way to create those contrasts, and yeah, they come out like this.
Yeah, but now I am talking with you and I was going through your interviews. You sound very calm, very casual, very happy, very cheerful, very carefree. And you kind of remind me of that, I think, Gadappa character from Thithi. In the way that he's also very calm, like he's just going through life, not that. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like if I talk to him, it would be the tone would be, I think, somewhat like this. So, was Gadappa is Gadappa inspired? Does he have some of your qualities? Did you put him in?
No, I have a lot to learn from Katapam, to be honest. He's mastered it. He's a master of that gleeful, like sort of. I mean, he's detached, but in just an absolute joyful sort of way. Um, I think I aspire towards those characters. That's why I write them. So I don't know if I achieve it. I'm quite restless. I am. But these characters and working on these films, they help me move towards that, I guess.
Are you
So,
are you like this on set also? This calm and
no,
peaceful, or
I don't know. I am quite hyper in general.
really? I don't know. You are looking so
um,
nice. Okay, we're so happy and carefree types. So yeah,
yeah,
I can't
no,
imagine you going so hyper. I just can't imagine.
no. I'm quite hyper. In fact, on set they call me very scary, and people are like quite scared of me. And I think you're so focused on trying to get it right that you can feel a little bit. They used to like these, like the principal is here, like they used to make that joke. But no, I think it's my art that gives me this grounding. I don't know if I'm like this, but I feel like if anyone's writing from their heart, they're either putting in things that from their own experience, or things that they are seeking to explore further. And I think the deeper levels of my films are part of that seeking. Even Jugnuma was that way. It was a journey while making it, and it was very testing at many times. So I'm now feeling I'm also so calm because the film has been sort of received the way it was intended, uh, and the journey has kind of you know seen itself through in a beautiful way. Um, but yeah, no. Again, there's all of life mixed up. Like it's a big mixed bag of so many things.
Okay, so before I invoke Ram Reddy, the strict principal, I will just ask final two questions. Then I will leave. I have already taken much of your time. Just last two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is I wanted to ask about your choice of in there in at two different points in the film. What you do is the movie actually moves very meditatively, very calmly like that. But during two moments, you show the events through the lens of boy's camera, Juju's camera, and the scene suddenly they become very dynamic, very fast, very energetic. Kind of for a brief moment it jolts you out of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole experience. So I wanted to okay, what made you go like okay, let me give audience a shock? What was your intention behind that?
Same like the premonition, right? To some extent,
Acha.
in
Okay.
some ways, like
Okay.
you need to. I find like the ability to surprise, like it helps the audience never feel like this is what is going to. That sense of safety shouldn't be there in some ways, like you feel the most receptive when you know that anything can happen. So if you take a lot of these like well-known festival films, if they shock you with nudity or violence, right, and many of them do it just to shock you for a bit, it works in such a way that you know that the filmmaker is not afraid of nudity or violence. If it's done right, it can be overdone, but I'm saying that it means that you're not willing to shy away from breaking the space. So then it makes you feel like anything can happen. That's number one. Number two is the realism of it, right? If you really, I think the realism in the film peaks in those handycam sequences because you really feel there was a family. And this is handycam footage from the past that maybe Mohan has, right? Because he's the only one left behind with the house. So it gives that layer of this actually happened and they actually existed. Also, I wanted to explore Juju as a character, not necessarily the same way as the other characters, because he's a free, you know, he's free. He doesn't have any of the weight of adulthood or even teenage. Like he's a child, right? He's that energy. He's just that buoyant energy. So it was all these reasons, and I actually shot that myself. So that we tied up my hands. So I wouldn't, and at my hip was the camera, and so I had to run through the window and and pretend to be a little boy. So I think there's actually a lot of me and Juju. Like I'm like that, like just go run and bug people. So we had a lot of fun with that, but I think more than anything else, it's that feeling of they actually are there. That documentary touch. It helps you really believe that they flew whatever the end, for example.
Yeah, sure.
So that was the idea, that jolt.
Okay, so last question, then okay, we will part ways. And you told in the beginning that you have found a new emotion for writing your next film. Can you name that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, quite happily. I am gravitating towards like high energy. So like if like how do I say it? You can be meditative by being quiet, or you can be meditative by bursting with life and energy. So I'm keen to make a high energy film, and I want music to be intrinsic to it. That's where I've started. So far I haven't used music, but I want music to merge with it the way I make other things merge with it. So I want like more of this alive, uh, from the characters, from their depths, from the camera work. I want to make it alive. That's where I am now. As in, this is my organic starting point. This may do a full 180 on me as I pursue it. But that feeling of high energy life while still being rooted in some inner space, because this film also took 8-9 years, so my energy is a bit repressed. I want to express it before I get older and whatnot. Like from athletics to music and like physicality, I want to explore those things. Let's see.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ram, for this, and thank you for speaking. And sorry for taking so much of your time. But I
No.
really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope I get to talk to you again after not probably 8 to 9 years, but
Yeah,
a
I hope
little soon. Yeah.
the next one is quicker.
I
But
really want to talk to you again, and hope I get the opportunity to talk to you. And yeah, thank you
I
for
would
so much.
really love to talk to you, because all the things that I'm most passionate about in my work are the things you ask me, and the things that you also like about the same work. So for me, it was like one of the most stimulating. It also took me back to the things that really matter to me, which is really helping me now as I go into the next one. So you have helped me. So thank you.
Thank you. I will use your words to get raise for my salary. Okay.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Ram. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye.